Hello, this is the new and improved FanFic Critic. New channel, new person, new outfit. Still got the straight blade. Don't worry, I won't be swinging it about like Meg used to do. And if you're curious about where Meg is, well, she's not home right now. And you're probably wondering, why are you the new FanFic Critic? Well, in my other series, I explained that Meg is retired and that she's not doing the web show anymore. But with that said, that doesn't mean that I can't take over. See this as a reboot, if you will. Now, this is going to be a tad different than the old web series. You see, I'm not going to be reading the story out loud. Instead, I'm going to be summarizing it for you. But if you're still interested in reading the story in question, I will have a link in the description below. So, it's up to you whether or not you shall click on that link. In some cases, I wouldn't recommend it, because if the story is particularly bad, well, I'm sure you've all already noticed the title of this video, Susan's Burping Problem. If you're wondering if the story is about yours truly, it is. Does the name Milo Kitty ring a bell to you? It should. If you're familiar with her masterpieces like Meg and Her Vagina of Wonders, Susan and Her Boobs of Terror, Lesbian Jesus' Heavenly Wedding. Yes. A plus side. This story, compared to those other stories, is relatively tame. Is it any good, though? No, and I'll tell you why. The story starts off with Meg sitting in front of her laptop reviewing a fanfiction. All of a sudden, the power goes out. Now, instead of being like a normal person and getting up and going downstairs into the cellar to see if maybe the circuit needs to be tripped, or, going and looking out the window to see if the rest of the block was affected, Meg just decides to gripe about the power being out, and then she just sits in front of the computer and stares. And she does it for so long that she starts to fall asleep. Then all of a sudden, she starts to hear a peculiar noise. The noise is burping. It's obvious that it's burping. It's like written literally as burp, burp, burp. But for some reason, Meg does not know that it's burping. And even though it's obvious that it's coming from my room, at first, Meg does not realize it's coming from my room. She's all like, "What's that noise? Burp. Where's that noise coming from? Burp. Is it coming from Susan's room? Burp. Is Susan burping? Yes, she's burping!" I digress. So Meg goes into my room. Now, if you remember how my room is set up, my bed is across from the door. I'm described as sitting on my bed, facing the door, reading a book. Now, unless I'm reading the book like this, where I can't see in front of me, I should have known that Meg had entered my room. Even with the book in front of my face, I'm sure I would have heard the door open. But no, apparently I'm so engrossed with my book that I didn't hear her come into the bloody room. So I just keep sitting there reading and burping before Meg finally says something. So Meg asks why I am burping. I explain to her that I am a burpist. A burpist. That I can control my gas at will. I go on about how I am the best person from my village who used to burp. That it was a burping tradition in my village, and that my village even had burping Olympics. And I looked it up. There is such a thing as burping Olympics. God knows why. And for the record, I didn't grow up in a village. I grew up in a city near the border of Scotland and England, if you must know, but I digress. So I was such a fantastic burper, apparently, that it was the only thing that my parents were proud of me for. Yes, if this was a reality, if I really was a burpist, my parents probably would have disowned me 5 years sooner than they actually did. So Meg then asks me, "Why are you practicing burping?" I explained to her that in a month's time, Boston, Massachusetts is going to be having a burping competition and that I am prepping my body for it, so I'll be prepared so I can win. Meg then questions, it's like, well, how are you going to get down there? You refuse to learn to drive on the right side of the road. I find this utterly insulting. I've lived in this country for over a decade. I know how to drive on American roads, thank you very much. I digress. So I explain that Archangel Assassin's going to drive me down there because Archangel Assassin is going to go into a pie-eating competition. So the next chapter opens up with me eating a ridiculous breakfast. It's so ridiculous. It's supposed to be a deal that I'm prepping my body for the gas because this is the day of the competition. So like a month goes by between chapter 1 and chapter 2. And after I eat my breakfast, they describe me as downing a bunch of beer so I have even more gas. Beer first thing in the morning, that's disgusting. I mean, I know some people do it, but And the amount that I drank, it's like it's amazing that I'm not drunk. So I guess in this story, I'm a bloody alcoholic. So then it shows me like tying my belt tight. And I'm like, that'll keep the gas in. Because apparently if you tighten your belt, the gas will stay in your body. Now, that's not how that works. If anything, that would probably squeeze it out of you. And if you're so bloated, you wouldn't be able to tighten the belt anyway. It's so bloody stupid. So anyway, I go into the car with Archangel Assassin, and before I can even buckle my bloody seatbelt, Archangel Assassin, which I'm assuming she was like starving herself for this bloody contest, just decides to floor it. And my character goes splatting up against the windshield like a bloody cartoon character. It's amazing that she didn't die. In reality, I probably would have went through the windshield with how they described Archangel's driving, but I digress. And apparently, because I got knocked out by this, all of the gas escaped from my body in a gigantic fart. And the fart was so bad that it punctured a hole in the ozone layer, according to the author. I just love how this story is painting me. I honestly feel like in these stories, this author describes me and Meg very vulgarly, and I don't know if it's just supposed to be for fun, and, I know that we're technically fictional characters, but I digress. It's still a tad insulting. So anyway, I'm unconscious for the entire duration from our home to Boston. And the only way I wake up is when we finally get there. Archangel Assassin amazingly doesn't get us both killed with her driving. She almost crashes the car, and then she goes flying out of the car to the pie-eating competition. It is at this moment that there's a twist in the story. I meet my arch-rival from my village, Bertha. I don't know what it's supposed to be because the name keeps on changing as the story goes on. But anyway, I have this arch-rival that I failed to mention in the last chapter. And apparently she is also a fantastic burpist, and that she traveled all the way to the States just to compete against me, just to one-up me. Which is bloody stupid. Oh, and did I mention the prize for this contest? I didn't, did I? No. The prize that we're competing for is... You'll love it. It's amazing. It's fantastical. $100. Yes, that's right. $100. We probably spent more on gas driving down to Boston than the prize money. Bertha probably spent more on a plane ticket to fly across the pond for $100. Amazing. Amazing. It's so amazing. Amazingly stupid. I digress. So anyway, after Bertha smugly walks off, I realize that I lost all my gas. And just like Darth Vader at the end of Revenge of the Sith, I scream, no! So dramatic. So dramatic, in fact, that lesbian Jesus is up in heaven doing her laundry. Yes, because apparently gods and goddesses need to do laundry. And she hears that I'm in distress. So, lesbian Jesus, she's a goddess. She has magical powers. You'd think she would just teleport down and go, oh, here you go, dearie. Here's your thoughts. Oh, I'm sorry. You need burping. Okay, here's your burps. Okay, bye. No, she doesn't do that. Instead, she teleports back to our house, and she tells Meg that I'm in trouble. So it's up to Meg to save the day. Super Meg. So Meg runs off to the store, buys a bunch of soda for me to drink. And you think lesbian Jesus would just teleport her to Boston. No. Instead, she tells Meg to bend over, and she spanks her. That's right. She spanks her, and Meg goes flying all across the state to Boston. When Meg gets to the contest, she's confronted by security. And they're like, oh, you can't be here unless you're competing. Well, what about the crowds? Can't she just say she's part of the crowd? So no, Meg has to say some random contest that she's participating in. And apparently she's participating in the split end contest. You're probably wondering what the split end contest is. It's literally comparing people's hair for how many split ends they have. I mean, I guess we would win in this instance, but still. So, to get away from the security guard, she mentions that she's going into that contest. And then when the guard's not looking, she goes and looks for me. She gives me soda and whatnot, and then she gets dragged off by the security guard to participate in the bloody split end contest. And that's the last we see of Meg for a tad. So then the competition. Me and Bertha are neck and neck in the competition. Everyone else isn't doing good at all. So the competition is literally just me and her. And we end up being tied. So the way to break the tie is that we have to burp a song. A song. So she does a couple of nursery rhymes. And I burp the Maya Maya song. That's not what the song's actually called. That's how the author describes it, and the author does say the real name of it. And if you're wondering what the Maya Maya song... Okay, here's a refresher. Maya he, Maya ho, Maya ha, Maya ha ha. Yes, that song. So I burp that song, supposedly so perfectly that the crowd's all riled up and dancing, and it's like, no, you wouldn't be able to burp that song. And I did look it up, I did Google it. As far as I know, no one has burped that song. So anyway, I win the competition. Bertha's all depressed and runs off crying. Oh, boo-hoo. Goodbye, one-dimensional villain. I meet up with Meg, and she got second place in the split end contest, and she lost to Hillary Clinton. Okay. Why the bloody hell would Hillary Clinton go down to Boston for a hair competition? And she doesn't even have split ends. But anyway, Meg was being a sore loser about losing, so she changed the trophy. So instead of saying Hillary Clinton, it'll say Shillery Clinton. It's like, it was so bloody stupid. So anyway, Lesbian Jesus meets up with us. She has us both bend over, and she spanks both of us and causes us to go flying back across the state, back to our home. And then the story ends on a cliffhanger, because then Lesbian Jesus is acting all menacingly and is doing the finger thing like Mr. Burns and says, I hope that please so-and-so, and that's the end of it. So, the story. Was it the worst Milo Kitty story? No, it was the most tame. But was it any good? No, it wasn't. I mean, I know the stories aren't supposed to be taken seriously, but this one was just so... It was, I don't know, it was just so bloody stupid. And why did it have to be burping out of all things? Burping, come on. Oh, I guess it could have been worse. At least it wasn't farting, but still. And what was with the weird thing with Lesbian Jesus spanking us? I mean, I don't know, it was just weird. It just felt like the story was just trying to be as bizarre as possible. But again, I take it any day over the vagina and the boob story. At least in this story, we weren't abusive towards each other. So it was relatively tame. Grammar... punctuation, spelling, not good. The author claimed that an English teacher proofread this before she posted it, which I am either guessing is a lie or it's true, and if it is true, then that teacher needs to be promptly fired because they clearly failed. But I digress. Well, I hope you liked today's episode. If you did, please be sure to click on that like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you all here next week. Until then, cheerio.